This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter. And welcome to the Charles Bookwalter Digital Town Hall. My name is Tim Kramer, and generally, on Thursday nights at 7, Charles Bookwalter and I are sitting here discussing the issues of the day, but due to a conflict in our schedule, can't be here live. But we did want to bring you a town hall that was recorded on Tuesday night in Crawfordsville, where some very hard-hitting questions were asked. You'll want to stick around for this one. It's a great one, right, Charles?
Tune in tonight because we talked about a lot of different things last Tuesday at the town hall meeting in Crawfordsville. I took a number of different questions that were not rehearsed or scheduled, and you'll see because we talk about controversial topics that I have no problem discussing. It also gives an opportunity for those people to air their own grievances and talk about their own issues and positions on statements. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about having a congressman that is a representative and not a legislator. Remember, it's the House of Representatives, not the House of Legislators. So remember that as we go vote in the primary. So I just want to remind everyone that we do this every Thursday, and next Thursday we'll be in Plainfield doing a live town hall that you can log into and watch here digitally.
Exactly. And tomorrow night, Friday night, we'll be at Purdue for a debate. Now, it's an open seat debate because Jim Baird was invited to go. In fact, he could set the schedule. He could have allowed us to have the debate tonight because he's at Purdue today. But he decided not to allow the people of the 4th District to ask questions or to interview him on why he voted for the $1.2 trillion Biden spending bill. He chose not to do that. So, Charles, tomorrow night will be at Purdue at Lynn Hall, 6 p.m. You're invited to come if you want to come. If you want to get tickets for this, it's RSVP only. You have to go send an email to Mike at bookwalterforcongress.com. That's MIKE at bookwalterforcongress.com, and we'll get you a ticket to get you in. What we're going to show tonight, Charles, is your live town hall that you did in Crawfordsville on Thursday, which proves the point that you're more than willing to stand up to the people, stand in front of the people of the 4th District and talk to them about the issues of the day. We did that on Tuesday night. You do that throughout the week, all week long. But this one was a great one because fantastic turnout, great questions, and some hard-hitting answers to hard questions and what your positions are. I think people are going to be really excited about what they hear tonight.
Yeah. The fact is that we haven't had a choice in the primary for the last 6 years. So if anything, the incumbent, the congressman, should be open to having at least one debate, right, at least one forum. And that's not happening. And that should tell you all you need to know. I've done probably 50 town halls or public appearances and taken questions off script, off the cuff. And so just, you just have to consider that if there's no primary opponent, there's not a primary in the first place. And here we are for the first time since 2018, and we have a serious race with a serious primary challenger, and the incumbent won't even do one single debate. So please show up. Yeah, show up on Friday because if I got called by the college Purdue Republicans and asked, hey, would you be willing to debate Congressman Baird? And we're going to offer they already said, we've already asked him to do it and asked for his schedule first because he's a congressman and we want to respect his time. I said, that's fine. You get that date and I'll make it work. I'll cancel everything. I'll prioritize a debate. But that never happened. So the college Republicans decided to have one anyway because they see and they know the importance of having the two candidates that are going to represent the district come together and talk about it, knowing that the primary is the election. So please come out to it and ask any question. And you'll see I'm not afraid to take your questions or challenge the narrative. So I look forward to seeing you there tomorrow at Purdue at 6 p.m.
With that being said, let's get to it. This is the town hall from Crawfordsville Tuesday night this last week. Enjoy.
Well, very much. And for those of you who aren't here, probably today later we'll get into how much of this is occurring all over the 4th Congressional District. As we do these town hall meetings, how many people show up that are engaged for the first time, that are running for precinct committeeman, that are running for delegate, town council, counselor, commissioner. It's happening across the board. This is one of the silver linings in what's going on in the world today. One of those is Tim Kramer. Tim, do you want to introduce yourself? Because there are some Boone County people here.
I'm running for Boone County Council at large. I've been, for the last 10, 15 years, I worked with the Republican Party in the state of Indiana. And when COVID came around, they made their decision on who they wanted in and who they wanted out. Those who spoke against the restrictions and the mandates were kicked out of the party. So here I stand today running against them. That's how we win, folks. You can't stop. You got to keep fighting. So here we are.
Yep. Tim Kramer worked for the Indiana caucus for the Republican Party, so he did all the commercials. If you look online on YouTube and you look at Jim Baird's 2018 candidacy commercial on YouTube, Kramer's did that. Mary and Tim Kramer did that. It was Tim standing up to the regime when he spoke out against Holcomb, when he filled in for the Hammer and Nigel show, and he spoke out against Holcomb, that he started getting some pressure and then ultimately lost his job making all these commercials for the Indiana Republican Caucus. All the leadership that you know, all the names today, he worked with all of them, did their commercials.
Jim Baird, his commercial for Congress we did, worked at him, been in his house, sit down with him, and we called him out when it happened. Why aren't you standing? I know these people personally, asking them why they didn't stand and defend us. We make commercials about them, and what's the one thing they always say in their commercials? I'll stand and fight for you. And the moment we needed them, they wouldn't. It was people like Charles Bookwalter, myself, that stood and said, we're not doing this, very loudly. And it's time that we all start doing it. If we don't, they're going to continue doing what they're doing. It doesn't stop. Yeah. I've been among them. I've worked with them. Trust me, they do not stop.
Yeah, and it's that. That's why people ask me, why are you running? And I've got a long story about what ultimately got me in, and many of you know it, and we may get into some of those details today. But ultimately, that's what it is, everybody, and we all know it, is that they had an opportunity during COVID in 2020. They had an opportunity to go down in history as some of the greatest elected officials and lovers of liberty and Republicans and saviors of our system in 2021. They go down in history for defending us against the COVID regime, against lockdowns, against mask mandates, against vaccine mandates. They had that opportunity, and they failed us. Every single one of them failed us. They did not say anything. They did not stand up and do anything. They sat comfortably. And I know very well why they were sitting back comfortably. There were many people that were sitting back comfortably while this happened to us. I had first-hand knowledge of this. If you remember, I was a rep for the Da Vinci robot. So I was in the operating room during COVID working when elective surgery became, they put a lockdown on elective surgery. That's what runs hospitals, is elective surgery. And they stopped that. A company like mine, Intuitive Surgical, has a bunch of these high-paid reps that go into these ORs every day to help, get robotic surgery moving and help surgeons with their surgery. They told us we couldn't go in these hospitals anymore. So for 2 months, approximately, we had calls every day at 10 a.m. with our team. And I watched it. I saw both worlds. I owned a Jimmy John's in commercial real estate, and I worked in the OR, and they told me I couldn't go to work. So in the morning, I was on these conference calls, whatever time it was in the morning, acting like the world was on fire. And I'd talk to these reps later. They'd be like, dude, this is incredible. I can't believe we get to stay home and get paid to stay home. I can't believe this is incredible. This is awesome. Well, where I'm listening to them like, I can't believe this. The call would get over. I would close my computer, run upstairs, throw on my Jimmy John shirt, and go start delivering sandwiches because no one would show up for work. The managers wouldn't show up. Someone would call in and say, my sister had COVID 2 weeks ago, and I saw a friend of a sister's cousin at a park. And and you guys don't even remember how they held this over so bad, because then they would say, I had employees trying to threaten me and say, oh, what, you don't want everyone in town to know that there's COVID going through your store. Do you guys remember that? That's how bad. I remember having those feelings, thinking, oh, geez, I don't want the community of Frankfort knowing that someone in my store got COVID. Like, because I knew this isn't a big deal, but I thought, what's that going to do to our business? No one's going to come anymore. It's going to completely shut down, go from sales to no sales. So people held that over us. They did it in the hospital as well. But the whole point of that is I saw both those things. I saw people that were incentivized to stay home, and they wanted to stay home. And people that had to go to work, had to, put their boots on, tie their shoes up, and go to work. And so I was in the both of those worlds. Ultimately, I left that healthcare world because I had to go work in the real world and save my Jimmy Johns and all that. And it was just such a scam what they did to us. So some of you have been here today, and I've talked about so many things, and I think this is our fourth. Is this our fourth one, Sandra? Third one here, fourth one total. Yeah, fourth one total, third one here since we started doing an every first Tuesday town hall. And it's exciting. There's all new people. There's new people in this room. Some of you have never been here before. That happens as we get closer to the election. But I'll share with you, I got some questions of what do we hear about? What do I hear about we're knocking on doors? By the way, our campaign has knocked on about 25,000 doors up to this point. We've purchased up about 50,000 pieces of that literature. We have about 100 people that are working under the campaign or volunteering with the campaign in the entire district. So if you may not have heard much about that campaign, it's because we're trying to win. We don't do all the events and do all the things the way that typical politicians and typical campaigns work because that's how incumbents win. That's not how grassroots people win. We actually have to work. We actually have to beat them in certain areas where we can win. For example, we don't have the franked mail privilege, so I don't get to send you direct mailers every week that you pay for, okay, because you're paying for all those direct mailers. We don't have that privilege, so we've got to enlist 100 people to knock on doors all the time. Last weekend we did, I think, 800. The weekend before that, we're up to 25,000, but so that's our direct mailer, is having volunteers go out and knock on doors and leave that literature behind. But we are finding ways to win. But one of the questions I get asked pretty regularly is, do you really trust the voting? Really comes down to, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that voting and voter integrity and all that. And another question I've heard recently, and it's only been brought up once, is someone asked, did you realize, and this is tied together, that the 250-year anniversary of the United States is coming up? Did you guys know that? In 2026, the 250-year anniversary is coming up. But when I've read about it, I've read that people aren't really making a big deal about it. And I'm 47. This would have been a big deal for us. Big American events like that were a big deal to us when we were a little bit younger, but they're not anymore. Because here's what I hear from people when we're talking about elections. Are we even going to have an election in 2024? That's what I hear, right? Or are we even going to have the same country that we have in 2026 at the 250-year anniversary? And those are legitimate concerns that people have. That is what I hear when I'm out knocking on doors. Like, what makes you think that this election is fair enough that you even have a shot to win? And so I guess it's what it is. It's a lack of enthusiasm in America right now. This is something that Todd Rokita talks about, and Vivek Ramaswamy talks about, and Michael T. Flynn talk about when they're going out talking about things. There's a lack of enthusiasm because they're teaching young kids, we were just talking over here, they're teaching young kids that we're the problem with society. Particularly, you're looking at it right here, particularly this, right? Everyone in here is white, and that's not always typical, but a white heterosexual male is the problem. Like, we've set these things in motion that the world is a terrible place because of people like us that love God, that love individual freedoms, individual liberty, accountability, and responsibility. They're saying that that's our fault. So we've really got everything backwards at this point. And this is how backwards it is. is that you want to see an outsider. Right now, it's the biggest part of campaign season. We're going to these Lincoln Day dinners regularly. Like right here, I come in here, I feel comfortable in a room like this. You want to know what's really like to be like an outsider? Is go to one of these Lincoln Day dinners as a candidate, as Charles Bookwalter. You're hearing all these gubernatorial candidates say, I'm an outsider. Brad Chambers, an outsider. Mike Braun, an outsider. Eric Doden, none of them. They could walk into the Republican Party Lincoln Day dinner and get a standing ovation. They could go to a Democrat dinner and get a standing ovation, no doubt about it. But when we have to go in there, it's difficult. And it's uncomfortable because it's them and us. It's the establishment, which includes these Republicans, and it's us. They work harder keeping people like me and a few other off the ballot or out of the party entirely than they do keeping moderate or leftist Republicans into our party. And that's why our party does not look like the same party that it was 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. We have lost so many of those key things that are so important to us. And now when they go in and they have a spending bill, a $1.2 trillion spending bill, Republicans are proud because they've clawed back like one or two social issues that they gave away like 10 years ago. So the Democrats come to the table negotiating with things that are important to us that we lost 10 years ago. And then Republicans act like because maybe they got some, I don't know, one program.
No more flags flying on you.
But that didn't even happen.
Oh, they got kicked out?
That didn't even, according to the Democrat summary of that bill, they were proud because it actually didn't get rid of flying the pride flag at some of these locations. So I think even that isn't it true in its entirety that there were major wins in that bill that was just signed. And this is happening right here in Indiana. And the Green New Deal, Joe Biden's Green New Energy Deal is the perfect example of that, because Indiana Republicans, is the blame game. This is what Jim Baer does, and all of them do it. They say, I'm conservative and you're Republican and you need to vote for me. But then as soon as a bill is passed, whether they voted for it or not, they'll sign legislation to get that money, and they'll just start introducing that into our state. That's what's happening with the solar farms, the wind farms, the carbon sequestration. That is just our Republicans going after money that has been made available by the Biden administration, and they're shameful. They're shameless about it. They're going after that money because it's made available. And then they send you a flyer that you paid for telling you how conservative they are and that you need to keep them in office. In reality, we're the outsiders. That's my point. We're the outsiders. If you are at all outside of anything that Jim Baird says, or you agree with 3/4 of the things on that sheet that I have right there, you're an outsider, and you're outside of your party because your party doesn't want us inside the party. They would rather have a leftist, Democrat-leaning person inside the party pushing these issues because that's how they get the money. That's how this is the Democrats' summary of that $1.2 trillion spending bill. It has more DEI stuff in it, more access to abortion. They're proud that they prohibited the Republicans from removing the funding for abortion for service members. They're proud of that. They talk about that. They stopped Republicans from stopping DEI, from stopping transgender surgery for minors. It's in the bill. And Jim Baird voted for this, and Republicans across the board voted for it. More Democrats voted for this spending bill than Republicans voted for this spending bill. That is our Republicans. Every single one in Indiana, except for Victoria Sparks, voted for this bill. And they come back here and they act like we're stupid, and they tell us that we're the morons, that they're conservative, and there's nothing that they can do. They had to fund the budget, they had to fund the government, so they had to sign this monstrosity of bill. Instead of having a spine and a backbone, which is what I've said here before is the hardest part about this job. For goodness sakes, these people are coddled. They work Tuesday to Thursday. They travel on Monday and Friday. They work like 6 months out of the year. This job isn't difficult. The difficult part of this job is having a spine, is standing up to those people that they have to work with every day. Because we all know that would be hard. What if you had to go to work and you were that odd person out that always was like, oh, geez, Charlie's here again, or John's here again. I'm never gonna hear the end of it about accountability or about I just don't want to have that in my work. Well, that's what we send these people to do, to be representatives to us, of us in Washington, D.C. Not go to Washington, D.C., spend their life there, learn how the game is played, let the lobbyists in all day long and the PACs, and then come here and tell us why we're nincompoops, why we're morons, and that we need to do everything the way they said because some lobbyist told them that that's how it needs to work. It goes to Washington, D.C. So you want to know why people aren't happy about a 250-year what is it called? The semi-quincentennial? Semi-quincentennial?
Well, they can't say it first of all.
Exactly, I know. I was just flexing that I can actually say it. And why people are concerned, are we even going to have an election, is because look around you. The unraveling of America is happening, and we all see it. It's been happening for over 50 years, but it's really picking up steam in the last few decades. And you all know it. That's why your 20-year-old, was it your son? Your grandson?
Thank you.
Yeah. That's why he's saying that. And because some people and young people, I think, a new generation starts to recognize it when they look around.
He is.
Yeah.
I'm proud of him.
And I've pointed my finger, I've kind of shaken my finger at, I'm sorry, my father's back there in the room, I'm not him, but that generation when, they've doubled down on all this. I can't even believe if you're born after 1970s that you go out there and talk about a gender pay gap and racism at work and DEI and all this stuff. I can't even believe people get away with saying that. My parents' generation did America, did the world a great service. And instead of acknowledging it, they doubled down on it. So they took the greatest generation, which still had some issues with separate but equal and racism issues and all that. And our generation, my parents' generation, really put a stop to that. And many of us grew up in rural areas. And outside of some off-color jokes that young people tell, minority brought in like, oh, it's a different guy from out, like, hey, my name's whatever, because we're nice people. And that generation stopped it. And we were a witness of it. I saw it. I grew up in Danville, Illinois. And because we were right across the border, I'd go back and forth. Danville, Illinois was one of the poorest places to grow up. And there's a lot of racial divide. I did not see white people discriminating against minorities or anything like that. And instead of saying, look at what we've done, look at how we have kind of stopped a generation and now it's what you bring to the table and it's a meritocracy, they've doubled down on it. Now they've implemented it in colleges across the board. Now it's name one company that doesn't have DEI initiatives or these woke initiatives. Like, we're the problem. And so they doubled down on this narrative that is so dangerous and pernicious and hurtful to all of us. And they've weaponized race so that most people won't come out and talk the way I'm talking right now because they're afraid of getting in trouble, of talking like this. But I've had enough of it, and I don't care. And I quit my poor corporate job because we couldn't talk like this in corporate America. You can't talk like this in corporate America. You have to be an entrepreneur, you have to have your own business, or you have to be retired to be able to speak freely in America. That's shameful. It's shameful, and we're seeing it happen in our lifetime. That's not to say that it's the United States or that it's America that feels this way. The idea of America, I think, this is why I'm optimistic, is still strong, and that spirit is alive in those of us, the few of us, or the majority of us, I would say. But it's the United States and it's our elected leaders, and it's the managerial class that is mismanaging this and ruling over us in a way that it has made us forget what America is about, or it's muffled that spirit of America. So young people don't have that pride. They don't know what American exceptionalism is. They don't have that work ethic that we all once had, because the United States of America is mismanaging the economy, healthcare, war, trade, immigration, the borders, education, mismanaging it. And then they tell us, I go to these Lincoln Day dinners, I hear them talk. I've been here for 12 years, Mr. or Mrs. Voter. I've been here for 12 years, and I just need you to send me back one more time so I can finish the deal. It's a scam. It is a scam. They're not in it. They're Democrats. They're not in it for you. They don't care about you. They've never picked up their Constitution. They've never taken a Constitution class. They don't know what's inside their Indiana State Constitution. They are doing this because this is a career for them, and it's a way for them to hand out treats and favors to their friends and the people that are politically connected to them. Just look around you. It's happening all around us. And then you get this. And then you get this spending bill. It's unbelievable. The CBO reported that by 2051, interest on the debt will exceed not just military spending, but spending on the two biggest items in the federal budget, Social Security and Medicare, if you didn't know that. That is not sustainable. It's the first time it's ever happened in the history of the United States. Even in World War II, we had greater spending than after the COVID years. The graph shoots way up. The difference is that we paid all that debt off after World War II. We have not done that. We're not able to do that. And after COVID, that spike went up, and now our interest payments are projected to be greater than the spending on the military, Social Security, and Medicare by 2051. Now, that's based on the projections they have now. This is why it's such a threat. When I talk about short-term threats, inflation is a big one. That's just on what it's projected on now. But 30 years ago, when they were doing their projections, they did not project or had no idea that we would be spending money on 9/11, on the forever wars, on a 2008 housing crisis, on COVID. $7 trillion, I think, on COVID alone, or the borders. So they can project all they want. They are projecting this in 2051. But if anything, yeah, it could be 2035. It could be 2040, the way that we spend money. And here's another, and that's not a stretch to think, because in 2008, have anyone heard of the term quantitative easing? QE, quantitative easing. That's when the government artificially suppresses interest rates. So they push interest rates down to incentivize entrepreneurs and other people to go out and borrow money. Because if you're got a project that you want to do, you're a construction worker, you're an entrepreneur, and you can get money at 3.5%, and you're used to getting it 6%, it's a big difference. So they artificially suppress interest rates, which encourages a malinvestment, and then people start borrowing money and they get misled. Well, the Austrian school, Ron Paul and Peter Schiff and a few of these other guys that were studying this back in the day, they said that you can't do quantitative easing ever in a government. You can't do it. You can't do QE. If you do QE once, you have to do QE infinity. You're never going to be able to back it out. And I tell you this for a reason, because they introduced QE in 2008 after the housing crisis. And then it was the worst it's been for us, right? A terrible recession, whatever. And they said we would never even consider doing this if our hands weren't tied. But the housing crisis is so bad, we're in such a recession, the government has to do this. We have to do QE, we have to monetize the debt, which means the government buys its own debt, it prints off money, and then creates ways of it to buy the debt. So we all pay for this debt, the federal government buys that debt. Then when the economy started to recover in 2010 and 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and President Trump said, this is the greatest economy that we've ever had, the greatest economy. And do you know what we did shortly after he said that? QE3. QE3. because it never ends when the federal government starts bailing itself out. And I'm telling you all to tell you that, like, that is a major threat that we have, which is this $1.2 trillion spending bill. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help Hoosiers. And if it does, they're lying to you. They're giving BP $1 trillion so they can build a pipeline and capture CO2 and pump it on the ground. That's when they're telling you they're helping you, when they bring this money back to the state. That's how they're helping. When Jim Baird does that, that's how this money comes back to you. It doesn't come back to you in the form of a tax cut. It's constantly a ratcheting up effect. As the two parties switch place, they never give us our money back, and they just spend the money on their friends, and right now it's war, okay? This is full of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and war. The F-35 fighter jet, which is a scam, is full of war. And the Democrats barely lost anything. The entire bill was an increase over Pelosi's budgets. That's what Jim Baird is doing. That's what your representatives are doing. And if you want to actually have a change, then you need to be prepared to invest in and get elected. And by investing, I mean tell 10 of your friends and drag them to the primary and vote. Is someone that's saying that this has to stop, it has to end, and it's going to look things like defunding the Department of Education. That's what it looks like. It looks like slashing this, like telling people they don't have a job. Like if you skip every letter of the alphabet, that's your last name, you're done. You're going home. We're cutting your budget 50%. You're going home from Washington, D.C. You've got to go get a job, actually being productive in your neighborhoods. We would slow down Washington, D.C. That's the richest area to live, as you all know, is the donut counties of Washington, D.C. They're scamming the rest of us. They tell us that they're doing us a favor, as they tell us that they're the most conservative member of Congress, and they're fighting for it. They're not, okay? They're not. It's a matter of fact. But that's what I came to talk to you about today, was this spending bill. I've gone through it. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable, and everybody should be ashamed and offended. Every Hoosier, you would never give a penny out of your pocket to fund most of this stuff is in it. And they do it without our input. They do it without our request. They just run for office again because they're incumbents and they know they're going to get reelected. And if you guys want it to change, then you've got to tell 10 of your friends. You've got to get people involved. This has been a big part of our campaign, which has been getting people involved in this process as precinct committeemen and delegate. That's why I'm telling you, we have so many people doing that. We did a precinct committeeman and delegate training event in Tippecanoe County. There were 53 people there that were recruited under our umbrella that are running for precinct committeemen in Tippecanoe County and are out knocking on doors for our campaign and for themselves. In Boone County, it's the same. In Jasper County, it's the same. We have some here in Montgomery County, Hendricks County, all over. But that's what it's going to take, everyone. And most of you are here because you are all aware of that. I'm just reinforcing it. So that being said, I know we want to do some things at the end of the night, and I've been going on for 35 minutes, so 30 minutes. So I'll take any questions you have about particular issues that are sensitive to you, that are important to you, and I'll answer them. Or I can go over my top issues, top items. Do you want to ask yours first?
Can I get you on mic real quick? Because we're recording this, and I want to make sure I know. There you go.
So I went to the election.
You guys speak into the mic.
Well,
Oh, you're good.
we went to the machine testing. I wanted to get the proper. So I went to the machine testing today in Crawfordsville for Montgomery County, and found out that only 9% of people in the city of Crawfordsville actually vote, which just floors me because of, people not caring what happens to them in their life and the apathy there. So then also they mentioned that if you had not voted for two times, you were automatically going into being unregistered. So I have a real worry about even going out and door knocking, because how do you, I mean, that's a pretty low percentage of
Yeah.
people. And I know there's apathy all across the country, but then if they start taking your ability to say, I haven't voted in 2 years, I can't now.
Presidential cycles.
Oh, 2 presidential cycles.
Because my understanding is you get moved to inactive, you can still vote. You could get canceled, but I was told, even if you're canceled, if you bring the proper documentation, you can still vote. That's what Karen Douglas told me.
Unless you're conservative. Then
But anyway, besides that, the 9%, the only 9% of the people here in the city, and I don't know what it is in other areas, but, you know, I don't know if there's a figure on that, a
yeah, no,
general
I think you're referring to the primary. I think the turnout is higher in the general.
presidential.
Yeah, in the general. In most of the generals, it's higher, but no, that's about right, is 9. I think in the 4th Congressional District, it was about 12% in the last presidential. There was 125,000, over 880,000, but no, it's as low as 4%.
So why do you think there's that horrible apathy? And what, you know, where is our
Yeah, there's a lot of
loyalty to
yeah.
our country? Where's
I'll
our
try to answer
patriot-
a whole bunch of these questions, but one, they don't teach civics in school anymore. That they don't want us involved in this process anymore. They've usurped all of these roles and responsibilities, these things that are supposed to be done among our among our communities. The federal government and the state's government have come in and they've taken over those roles, and so we just don't do it anymore. We leave it up to them. We let them do it. That's why they mismanage it. They do a terrible job at doing this, but it's also why I can say things like, it's very frustrating. She was asking me earlier, and I said, people ask me what the biggest threat to the nation is. Short term and long term, I have different answers. But long term, it's apathy. Long term, it's apathy because none of this other stuff, the short term problems, are possible without apathy. This government that we have instituted among men is supposed to have us involved every step of the way. And the minute that we give up that responsibility, this is what happens. This spiraling of America, it spirals out of control. We've got all kinds of examples of government spiraling out of control.
The other thing too, I remember, I don't know what year it was, but going to Dick Lugar's office about immigration back.
Well, we've been fighting it for 25 years.
Yeah, and it was apparent to me when he was in office that he knew best what was right for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the attitude that was
Absolutely.
in that office. And I said to his little, what do you call him? Staffer. I said, well, maybe we know better and we need to get rid of him if we don't have a voice. But the thing is, you call these different people in Washington or the state, and nobody, well, we'll pass that on. We don't know how they feel about this, and that's the standard.
Yeah, that's the standard. But we're fixing that because this is the new standard. This is what it's going to look like.
Thank you.
If we win, having town halls. We have debates coming up. We have forums. We have a debate coming up that the incumbent isn't even going to show up to this debate because you're right. They don't care about your opinion. They think they are smarter than you.
And that attitude of we know better than you
Yes.
you see it on TV if you
They're,
watch any of
you go, this is what I mean by being an outsider, how painful it is to go to some of these events and these Lincoln Day dinners and watching these people parade around and slap each other on the back like they are smarter than you and me and everybody else. It's painful to be a part of it and watch. But this is why I say, like, I'm optimistic at the same time. This is why you don't see me on TV. Well, one, we can't afford it, but two, we're too busy on the ground doing things that actually can win an election. Because I know that only 9% of the people come out and vote in the primary. And 5% of those are the die-hard party people. They care about the party more than they care about you, more than they care about the principals, more than they care about their neighbors. They care about that party. That party pays them, feeds them, and feeds their friends. They care about that party. And that's that 5% out of that 9%. Well, what if we got 35% of us to actually show up and vote? What if we have 55% of people? We actually had normal people. I go to these events and I'll have people say, like, after we'll be talking to me, like, you seem pretty normal. Like, yes, because normal people can identify with each other. Like, we realize that we're normal. You're a normal person, right? They're not normal. They look down on you. They think they're smarter than you. They think they're better than you. It's so obvious. They're smug, they're arrogant, they're condescending, and they're morons. Right? It's a terrible mixture to have all in one group. And I've seen too many of these people, and it's offensive to me, and it should be offensive to all you. And the only way that we stop this is that if you drag 10 of your friends to the primary, tell them you got to go vote for different people. If their name says incumbent on it, vote somebody else. At this point, that's where we are. I would rather have someone that paints all day long. I am not kidding. Running the government.
We talk.
People that paint know how to run a business. People that paint know what customer service is, how to hustle and get a job, how to finish a job, how to do quality work versus, not quality work, how to keep a customer happy. All these little things that normal people know how to do in our business, in our lives, they don't do or they neglect to do. As they mismanage this country and it unravels in front of us, and that's what we're seeing. But again, I'm optimistic. One, because you guys, I'm all over the 4th. I go to commissioner meetings. I go to these meetings all over the 4th Congressional District. And you should be optimistic. I really am optimistic that there's a really good chance. There is a liberty revival happening right now. We have a consultant that works in D.C. He's done a FOIA request for all the people that are running for precinct committeeman and delegate in Indiana. He was floored. He's like, I've never seen this many people run for office. And it's not just in Indiana. It's happening all over the United States as people wake up and realize that they're lying to us, that they don't have our best interests at mind and at heart. And if we want to do anything about it, we have to get involved and we have to get engaged in a sustained engagement. You can't show up and then walk away. You have to engage them for a sustained period of time because they're going to do the same thing. And particularly Christians that don't want to get involved in government, have to get involved in government because if we don't, then they are going to, and they're gonna lead the way.
They didn't vote in the last election, and look at what happened on Sunday.
Yeah. Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
my
Hey,
name's Raina, and I just would like to ask you, what is your position on cannabis?
I've said this before. It's a tough position for me and in the Republican Party because a lot of Republicans are, and I'm very conservative, like to legislate morality. My position is this: I think cannabis should be recreational and legal completely. The only reason I wouldn't vote for full recreational cannabis is if the state of Indiana just wants to tax it and take that money and not offset any other taxes with that revenue. If they were to do that, that would create a windfall of billions of dollars into the coffers of Indiana that they're going to turn around and weaponize against us in some form or fashion. They'll put cameras on traffic lights, license plate readers. They'll have big weapons of war. I've seen them here in Zionsville that they'll bring here in order to oppress us. So I think, and Genesis talks about this, chapter 3, I think talks about all the, there's the seed of the fruit, and I think cannabis is a lot less harmful. We don't know that much about it, but it's a lot less harmful than alcohol. But these are my personal opinions about it, and I think it should be recreational and legal, and then the states can determine how to deal with it. But I would never support it if they did not offset taxes in somehow. I think the taxes and them weaponizing our money, that's what they're doing. They're weaponizing our money against us. We pay 55 cents out of every dollar that goes to the state. And then they create agencies like the IEDC that comes in and takes our land with our money. Or they build new justice centers. They just create infrastructure around us to oppress us, and they can only do it
with our money and our authority. We let them do it. So that's a long way of answering your question. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Not specifically, but I do want to just say that there are many, there's many other things other than just human consumption that cannabis can help benefit the quality of life, the earth. I mean, hempcrete, we've got biodegradable plastic.
Yeah.
There's,
Industrial.
yeah,
Yeah.
there, well,
Industrial
I'm
hemp could
for,
save- yeah.
I'm for plant medicine across
Absolutely.
the board. So the environment, the, people, even to children. I don't know if you guys have heard some stories in places like Colorado and those kinds of places where children with like seizures and cancer have received benefits from a plant that we here in the state of Indiana,
Well, and this whole green business too, if they would allow people to grow at least industrial
It's like the
hemp.
industries, the green industries they're pushing, they are creating the narratives to push those way forward. When there's biodegradable fuel
Exactly.
that could come from cannabis. Henry Ford had a vehicle that was partially made from biodegradable, from hemp plaster. There's a reason they narrate some of the ways forward, because they want the control of how they push that way
Housing,
forward.
a lot of housing, construction can be done through hemp as well.
Yeah. The problem is we don't know. And why do we not know? Because they made it a class Schedule 1 illicit drug, so that we'll never be able to study it. And they did that for a reason.
Would you support rescheduling?
Yeah, absolutely. I would support anything that removes cannabis, that a generation of young people my age spent years in prison because they were doing something at home or selling something to another consensual adult that got them in trouble. People have no idea what it's like to live in prison. Although I've never been in prison, I've been to SEER school, which is very similar to that. And I've been in a little tiny cell for long periods of time trapped in there. And you talk about freedom and losing your freedom, it's unbelievable. But Americans are like, oh, yeah, we need to put them in jail forever because they use cannabis. It's crazy when you think about the ideas of freedom. But any kind of crimes associated with it need to be taken, need to be dealt with as a crime. But reducing the schedule, decriminalizing, I would support. And I've been on the record. I've talked about this before. It's just difficult to have the conversation in the Republican Party because Republicans like to legislate morality, which I don't think that is the right thing to do here in this case. I think that that the legislation against cannabis has been more hurtful and more harmful to Americans and American freedom than the legislation in favor of it. I think it's been more hurtful. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You bring up that you used to work in the medical industry. Okay, 2023 was the worst year of my life. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I had no choice but to pick out 2 excellent doctors at IU University there in Carmel, whom they also saved my life because I wouldn't be here. I'm not supposed to be here right now, but I am. But I'm also the example of what chemotherapy does. It almost destroyed my entire body in order for me to continue breathing. Now I have difficulty walking. Now I've had to have cataract surgery. I've got neuropathy in both my hands and my feet. I'm a professional chef, can't cook anymore. I'm an artist, and I have a hard time drawing because my senses in my body have been destroyed. And I don't know what else has also affected my liver and other parts of my organs. But when you get big pharmaceutical like Eli Lilly coming into Boone County, that suppress research on cannabis. I couldn't even get a gummy unless my niece came in from California to help relieve the pain from the neuropathy. You have to learn how to adjust to it because it's pretty strong, but it did help me through some painful moments. But Susan, in one of my meetings with one of my doctors, asked about alternative medicine. She shut that conversation down very quickly because she's not allowed to talk about alternative because she works for IU, who's connected to Lilly, who's connected to all the other big pharmaceutical companies. And just my year alone was hundreds of thousands of dollars in treatments. And it's way off key. We've got to get alternative, like ivermectin's very closely linked to curing cancers. Not all of them, but it's at least assisted in recovering from cancer. But we can't even get a prescription in Indiana for ivermectin anymore because of COVID. You know, and it's a concern for me, having now lived through it,
Yeah.
that I want to see something move forward to allow somebody else to do some research.
It's a concern for all of us. What you're seeing is just a result of healthcare being treated as a right and not as a service. Okay, this is a result of that. That when the government gets involved in something and treats it as a right, that everyone deserves it, that takes a negative right and makes it positive, which a negative right is something like your life. Like, you can't infringe on my life. It's not hard for you. Don't hurt me. You can't kill me. And the minute that you infringe on that, that's a negative right. You're taking it away. A positive right is when you have to take something from somebody and give it to something else. That's what healthcare is. And if you have to take from me to provide for someone else, that's no longer a service industry, it's no longer a free market, and it leads to these things that we have today. If you think about it in other terms like this, and I'm just talking philosophically at this point, healthcare is one of the only industries where I can think of where you've got someone that wants a service and someone providing a service, and the two of these people never coming together and negotiate how much they're willing to pay for this service. Isn't that crazy? It's like the only industry where you have to go through a middleman that doesn't even know. I worked in healthcare for a long time. I talk to these surgeons all the time about robotic surgery. Part of our job was so difficult is to try to get them to understand how much does it cost for you to do one Da Vinci chole in your OR. Like, oh, we had no idea. Like, really? Like, oh, they don't have a clue how much. You ask a doctor how much any of this stuff costs, they have no clue. They don't talk about prices, they have no idea because there's a middleman in that. But I guarantee you, if you have somebody that wants to get, they're a 50-year-old male and they want to get a colonoscopy, and you have a doctor that wants to give it, and the system we work under now is like somewhere, like how much you want, I don't know, $10,000, whatever. In the real system, it would be, you go there like, hey, I want a colonoscopy. The doctor's like, hey, what about $5,000? Like, really? And you said I needed what? How often? You know, maybe I'll come back in a year. And the doctor's like, no, wait, how about $4,000? No, it's still not good for me. I'll come back. Okay, if we do it for $2,000, would you do your colonoscopy in the next week? Yeah, $2,000 is a number that I could do. That's how markets work. That's how this kind of stuff works. And we don't have that in healthcare anymore because too many leftists and big government Republicans have said that healthcare is a right that everyone gets. That's the narrative now. I mean, how many times have you heard it? That's the narrative, that healthcare is a right, and it's not. It's a service, and it needs to be treated like a service. And these surgeons that I called on for a decade, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, they're not doing this for your benefit, okay? These surgeons are doing it to pay for that 7 Series BMW that they're driving, and that big home that they own, and their summer home up in Michigan, and the plane that some of them own that they go fly on the weekends, okay? That's why they're cutting on you. And so it is a service, and if it were treated like that, then we would have a better service. And I'll just use this one quick anecdotal story because this is how it all got convoluted. It's because, it's like in World War II. Okay, so in World War II, we were sending all of our guys over there to fight, and they brought in communist, socialist policies in America to go fight communism abroad. And some of those were wage controls, price controls that they put on Americans. So they put wage controls on American industry. So they could not hire Americans for over a certain amount because the government didn't want private industry in America competing with them getting soldiers to send overseas. So they said, industry, you can only pay this much. That's your cap. That's a socialist policy. But that's what they were faced with during World War II. So what did they do to encourage workers to come work for them? They offered them health insurance. So it was a government intervention adopting a socialist policy that led to the merger of business and health insurance that we now face today. And so instead of fixing a government, getting out of the price caps, wage controls, they just further
intervene, which causes business and government to create all this around us that we have to navigate through that costs us a fortune. And we pay for it. Like this silly road they're going to build on 231 North that charges your EV that none of us are going to drive. None of us are going to drive. And it's going to cost $1 billion. Only to benefit a few. Not any of us that live here, not any of us Hoosiers. And this is wash, rinse, and repeat. You've all seen it longer than I have in my own lifetime. This is how they do it. You guys have any questions over there at that table? Yes, sir. Paul?
So what is your plan to help the January 6th defendants?
Yeah, good question. I don't know that much about that situation legally, okay? My plan would be, what I would do if I were to get elected, I would go visit them. I would go hang out with them. I would demand that someone do something about releasing those people immediately. Except anyone that was involved in some kind of violent thing, that's it. But these people that were not there, that now are facing 30 years, they didn't even step on the ground. There were people that walked in and walked out and didn't do anything. And they're in jail or they're facing jail time. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. And we watched as like Kavanaugh or one of those Supreme Court justices was approved, and they went and beat down. It was like 3 years before COVID or before the riots, and they were at the Supreme Court beating on the door, causing mayhem. They burned down the cities, and we have a few people out there. J6, just so you know my opinion, J6 was an example of how you protest. You had a bunch of right-wing conservatives that were unhappy and had a right to be upset about it. And they went out there and showed how how Americans actually protest. No guns, no violence, very little criminality. What is most likely what happened were organizations that I used to work with in the Special Forces, like Task Force Orange. This was probably a government-initiated thing that incited, okay? There were probably more government agents on the ground there than there were Americans. They're all over out there. They're called TF. TF Orange, TF Blue, TF Green, TF White. So my guess is that, so what would I do? I'd shed light on it. I would go visit them. I just saw someone got put in jail, and I'm admitting it, I didn't do it, but I was going to have my daughters write a little letter to them and send it to them in jail. I'm sure that would bring a smile to someone's face to get a letter from a young child, from a patriot. But it's a shameful. I will tell you what Jim Baird said when someone close to our campaign said, "Hey, what are you going to do about J6?" I can't remember. It wasn't a vote or something. Do you remember the specifics of it? But he said, "What can I do?" And he walked away. That was his response. Yeah, I am. Ivan Raiklan, yeah. I have not. Ivan Raiklan, by the way, he's a former Green Beret. Yeah, he and I have talked a number of times. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I might have heard it. I just don't remember what it is. Yeah. Yeah. At this point, we ought to get rid of Mike Johnson. Yep. There's probably more, but look, they just don't want to do these kinds of things that take a lot of work. And anyone out there that owns a small business, you know that this is what we go through. This is what you go through sometimes. I own a small business, and sometimes you go through a constantly firing to get to the right person. This is what happens. So if we have to fire some speakers to get to the right person, then that's just the way. But establishment Republicans, in fact, there's some in Morgan County that they're big in our party in Indiana down at the State House. Said, I won't support Charles Bookwalter because he supported the 9 and the 20 holdouts to change the speaker. That's their problem with me. To hold the speakers accountable so that they don't do this to us. $1.2 trillion. And if Mike Johnson doesn't have the spine to stand up, then we get somebody else in there. And we keep doing it until someone else gets in there.
Christian duty not to fight against the system is kind of what he said.
That is difficult to, yeah, sir. Yep.
Would you vote yes or no on term limits?
I've already been endorsed by U.S. term limits. I've signed their pledge,
and they have endorsed me in my campaign. They did that last summer. So I would sign it, yes. I would adhere to it. People ask me how many, I'm looking at 6 years. If I were to get in, I would serve 3 terms, potentially 6 years. And that's probably when I walked away from the military at about 10 years. I'll walk away. I'm not going to make this a career. The only caveat I would say is like if by chance, I hate to be, I just made fun of someone saying 12 years, but if by chance in 3 cycles, if whatever that year that was, if we're like this close to defunding the Department of Education and the bill, like we have it and it's going to go to the floor and we got all the support for it, that might be a reason to run for one more cycle and defund at a particular agency, but you have to be a really big deal for me to keep.
But your goal would be to get it done in the first.
That's, yeah, right. There's already bills. There's already bills on the, Thomas Massey's already offered this more than once. There's people that are behind it. They just need reinforcements, everybody. And the white pill, as you leave here tonight, is like, it went from 9 to 20. This bill, Republicans, it's a shame that Republicans don't have any conservative leadership. They do not have it. Republicans voted for this, but 100 Republicans voted against this bill. And that's why we should be optimistic, because there is a change that's happening. We just have to send them some more reinforcements.
What's your solution on dealing with something like that if you get in Congress?
You don't vote for it, first of all. And you're prepared. What do? You have town halls. You let the government shut down, and you come back.
Strategy going forward, though.
Line item appropriation bills.
Okay.
Single appropriation bills, where you have to vote. You can't. And even the Senate said that they should have been negotiating this stuff months ago. This bill that they signed is just the fiscal year 24 budget.
3 months.
So 3 months is what that $1.2 trillion funds. 95 billion going to Ukraine, among other money. So this is just a couple months of funding. So what do? You actually make them do their job by negotiating this stuff early on. You get back to single line appropriations. You don't let Mike Johnson suspend the 72-hour bill that it takes to read this 2,000-page bill. And so you say, no, you didn't give me the time to read it. I don't know what's in it. I'm not going to do it. Oh, and then people cry that the government's going to get it shut down. They shut us down. If they can shut us down, there is no question. If they can shut down the economic engine of the world, which is the American worker, then we can shut them down, no problem whatsoever. And in fact, I think they try to fear us in this shutdown, government shutdown, like it's so bad that we wouldn't be able to live life without them, because we would see in a government shutdown how little we actually need our federal government. We would see that the ATF, we don't need an ATF anymore. We don't need the Department of Education. We don't need the CIA regime changing all over the world. We actually don't need these agencies. And I think that's why they try to instill so much fear in us, so that we could never let it shut down for fear that it would be proven that we actually don't need these agencies running our lives. And so that's what you have to be prepared. And that's why we do these town halls. I do a town hall every single Thursday, and I do town halls live. And if I won, I've already told people I'm not living in D.C. We're doing this. Why? Because I'm going to have to come to, Because I'm going to have to come here and tell you exactly why I voted to shut down the government, why I voted to defund the Department of Education, why I'm not supporting another $14 billion to Israel, why I'm not signing off on a $300 billion to Ukraine, or whatever it may be, okay? Because we can't even solve the problems in our own backyard. We don't even know what's going on in our own schools. You don't know what's going on in corporate America, and yet Americans think that we can solve the issues between Russia and Ukraine. It's ridiculous. A 4,000-year war between Israel and Palestinian Jews and Christians, and America thinks that they can just send some bombs over to kill people and that's going to solve the issue. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And we have to have someone that's going to stand up against it, but then come back and tell everybody, like, hey, I'll take all your questions, but this is why. This is why I voted this way. This is why we're doing this, because you guys sent me here to go do this for a reason, to go clean it up and then hand it off to somebody else to better manage this resource.
And we're rolling whenever you're ready.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for the Bookwalter for Congress weekly Thursday night digital town hall meeting. I hope that you were able to take something away with that. If you have any questions about what was discussed tonight, you can contact the campaign at info@bookwalterforcongress.com or sign up for our newsletter. Just remember that tomorrow night will be the open seat debate at Lynn Hall at Purdue at 6 p.m. And I'd love it if you were there. Please come prepared to ask any question. I'm happy to take your questions. Also, next Thursday, we'll have a live town hall in Plainfield, Indiana, in Hendricks County. So if you've wanted to show up for one of those but haven't had the opportunity, the next opportunity is April 11th, Thursday evening in Plainfield. And go to the website for more details about that. Thanks again for joining us tonight. I look forward to seeing you. If you like what you see, please go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, and always remember that grassroots candidates like myself could use 3 things: time, talent, or treasure. Have a blessed evening, and thanks a lot for your support.